Elviana gazes affectionately at Klaus, her heart swelling with an unspoken devotion. She vows silently to protect the one she loves, cherishing the warmth he brings to her life. Memories flood back of a time when her world was colorless until he arrived to paint it with life. Flashbacks reveal a strict upbringing where she was scolded for her straightforward personality and inability to follow rigid rules. Critics demeaned her as a lower-class student who disrupted the peace instead of fitting in with proper etiquette. Overwhelmed by isolation, she lamented her fate as trouble seemed to follow her relentlessly at the girls' academy. She introduces herself as Elviana Brentza, born into the high nobility as a duke's daughter. At 13, she was formally introduced to the young heir of House Rusvin, her arranged fiancé. Skeptical at first about their compatibility, she was quickly disarmed by his undeniable adorableness. Klaus Rusvin introduced himself with polite grace, marking the beginning of their engagement. Time shifted to their school days, where Klaus called out to her amidst the campus grounds. Seeing her cornered by a group, Klaus stepped in to condemn the cowardly mob for ganging up on her. A bully confronted them, reminding Elviana of a previous altercation where she supposedly made a fool of her. Ignoring the hostility, Klaus firmly took Elviana's hand and commanded her to come with him. He led her away from the confrontation, leaving the stunned bullies and onlookers behind on the staircase. The scene shifts as the tension dissipates, leaving only the echo of his name. In a quiet corridor, Klaus knelt and apologized profusely for exposing her to such an unpleasant sight. He berated his own weakness, ashamed that he could only run away instead of verbally defending her against the upperclassmen. Elviana watched him with widening eyes, her heart stirred by his raw vulnerability and frustration. For the first time in her life, she realized someone genuinely cared enough to cry for her sake. Determined to return the kindness, she offered him a box of handmade cookies as a gesture of gratitude. Flustered and hiding her embarrassment, she aggressively shoved the gift at him, instantly regretting her rude tone. Klaus accepted the gift with a gentle smile, offering a simple and sincere word of thanks. He vowed to become stronger and protect her, striving to become a fiancé truly worthy of her hand. That pivotal moment marked a shift in their relationship, sealing a bond that would define their future. Holding his hand, Elviana silently wished to remain by his side forever, cherishing their connection. Though he confessed his love, she couldn't voice her own feelings, watching in awe as he grew stronger over the years. Their peaceful days were shattered by an incident while they walked together in the forest. Steeling her resolve, Elviana decided that this would be the day she finally told him she loved him. Their attention was caught by a strange, cute animal they had never seen before in the wild. The creature, appearing like a rabbit with a mystical eye, sat quietly before revealing its true nature. Suddenly the beast lunged, and Klaus screamed a warning as Elviana moved to intercept the attack. Blood splattered as the creature struck, catching Elviana off guard despite the warning. Klaus panicked, seeing her injured, and insisted they get her to a doctor immediately. Elviana brushed off the injury as a mere scratch, desperate to prevent him from worrying about her. However, a strange sensation began to take hold of her body in the aftermath of the bite. After visiting countless hospitals, a temple finally identified the cause of the bizarre feeling plaguing her. She was cursed by an extinct magic beast that drains her life force until it is slain. The curse was identified as a powerful form of charm magic, radiating an ominous energy. The charm activates when she harbors romantic feelings for a handsome man, creating a permanent, indefinite allure. To protect Klaus from the curse's effects, she resolved to handle the burden alone, knowing he would blame himself. She swore her attendant to secrecy, demanding that Klaus never be told about her condition. Attempting to maintain normalcy, she told herself that everything would be fine if she just acted as usual. At the academy gate, she tried to distance herself from Klaus, claiming she didn't need his concern. Klaus persisted, offering her a dropped handkerchief, while she struggled to maintain her composure. Ignoring his gesture, she tried to walk away, feigning indifference to his presence. The charm magic flared violently, and Klaus grabbed her arm, concerned about a bruise he noticed. He tightened his grip, demanding her attention, unaware that his touch was triggering the curse. Suddenly, random male students were drawn in by the light, praising the incredible blessing of meeting her. The men were mesmerized by the magical aura surrounding Lady Elviana, drawn like moths to a flame. Elviana panicked as the charm took hold, realizing something was definitively wrong with the situation. Klaus questioned the identity of the strange man fawning over her, while Elviana realized the charm magic was active. Desperate to hide the truth, she shouted that it had nothing to do with him, fearing he would discover the curse. Internally frantic, she struggled to find an explanation that wouldn't reveal her secret. Pushing him away, she begged him to leave, leaving Klaus standing there in confused silence. Convinced that total avoidance was the only way to protect him, she cut him out of her life completely. 4 years later at the welcome banquet, the consequences of her decision had taken a dark turn. Gossip spread that she toyed with men despite her engagement, damaging her reputation severely. Elviana endured the rumors, knowing things had only gotten worse as she entered her 2nd year. The magic beast remained elusive despite searches by the knights, leaving the curse unbroken. She inadvertently charmed more men, earning the infamous title of the man-ensnaring villainess. Guilt-ridden, she wished she could neutralize the magic in public, knowing it was her fault for using magic that day. She coldly ordered a charmed admirer to go help the new students, using her influence to send him away. Across the room, her eyes locked onto Klaus, his expression unreadable and distant. He approached her, and she turned away, defensive and unwilling to engage. Klaus remarked coldly that she had certainly tamed quite the crowd of men, his voice laced with disappointment. She retorted that it was natural given her surroundings, while internally mourning their crumbled relationship and the contempt she now faced. Watching him, she questioned if avoiding him was truly the right choice, longing to tell him the truth. A fleeting wish crossed her mind, hoping they could return to the past and that he would say he loved her. Klaus's questioning of the men around her felt like a dream, a concern she knew he no longer held. The illusion shattered as Klaus warmly greeted Lady Lucille, ignoring Elviana's presence. Seeing Klaus and the princess together, onlookers whispered that they looked like the real engaged couple. The crowd's attention shifted entirely to the radiant princess, leaving Elviana in the shadows. Lucille informed Klaus that his friend was looking for him, displaying a familiarity that stung Elviana. Klaus responded with a smile, acknowledging the message with an ease he no longer showed his fiancé. With a polite excuse, Klaus stepped out, thanking the princess before leaving the two women alone. Elviana wondered why the princess addressed her, only for Lucille to comment that Klaus seemed troubled. The princess requested a private word with Elviana, her demeanor shifting to something more serious. Lucille delivered the crushing news that Klaus didn't like Elviana anymore, claiming he had said so himself. She boasted that as a princess, she could offer him honor, status, and advancement that Elviana could not. Elviana was stunned as Lucille claimed Klaus was worried her bad reputation would tarnish his family name. With a chilling smile, Lucille demanded that Elviana break off her engagement with Klaus immediately. Elviana realized the day she had always feared, the day Klaus would come to hate her, had finally arrived. She lowered her head in resignation, thinking it was strange that this rejection hadn't happened sooner. Lucille smiled triumphantly, telling Elviana she was counting on her to end things. Elviana stands captivated by the rare sight of Klaus' smile, a gentle expression she has not witnessed in quite some time. A wave of melancholy washes over her as she realizes it has been so long since that warmth was directed at her. Watching him with another woman tears at her heart, leading her to conclude that she no longer deserves to have him smile at her. She admits to herself that she has never once told Klaus how she truly feels, lamenting her inability to be honest. Clenching her hand, she reflects that ever since the curse began, her bad reputation has only served to make his life harder. A heavy sense of failure settles in as she acknowledges her inability to make Klaus-sama happy. She reasons that it is only natural for him to be drawn to someone straightforward and powerful like Lady Lucille, especially while the curse remains. Filled with self-loathing, she decides that she hasn't protected him at all and is the worst kind of fiancé. Resolving not to hurt him any more than she already has, she decides the only thing she can do is step out of his life. Her maid calls out to her as she solidifies her painful decision to leave. She is suddenly discovered in her hiding spot. Klaus finds her and acts strangely affectionate, rejoicing that it is finally just the two of them, while Elviana panics that she has been found. Desperate to escape the situation, she attempts to run, but Klaus catches her. Klaus holds her close, noticing her clear discomfort, while she questions his strange behavior. A voice calls out in shock at the scene unfolding before them. Klaus coldly addresses the interruptions as pests that show up everywhere, while Elviana realizes he has saved her. The intensity of his gaze bores into her, silencing the world around them. She quietly thanks him for saving her from the unwanted attention. Klaus informs her that he will visit her later, leaving her confused by his sudden assertiveness. He turns away, his face flushing with an intensity that suggests overwhelmed emotions. Elviana tries to compose herself, insisting she is fine now, though the encounter has left her shaken. Standing amidst the ruins, a gasp escapes her lips as she processes the events. Klaus approaches her again, noting she seemed to be in a hurry, and asks if something is wrong while staring with his crimson eyes. She admits she was looking for him to say something, though her heart begins to waver in his presence. He calmly asks to know the reason for her search. She is taken aback by how easily he agrees to listen, not expecting such a receptive response. Steeling herself, she finally voices her request to dissolve their engagement. She admits she realized a long time ago that he might hate her now. Believing she no longer has a place in his heart, she confesses she has been bracing for this day ever since. Klaus looks at her with a pained expression, asking if the separation is truly what she wants. She questions why he looks so upset when she is convinced he dislikes her. He is visibly shaken, asking why she would make such a sad face. Pulling her into an embrace, he vehemently denies hating her. He struggles to find the words, admitting he cannot hold back anymore. He confesses that he loves her too much to let her go. Elviana is shocked by his confession as he tells her his heart won't stop racing when he is near her. She is confused, having felt a negative emotion earlier, but now sees only a look of bliss on his face. As he gazes at her affectionately, she is struck by the terrifying realization that she may have accidentally cast charm magic on him again. In the carriage, Klaus clings to her, and she laments that things have turned out this way instead of ending the engagement. She panics internally, wondering if she really just charmed Klaus again. He tucks hair behind her ear and calls her cute, leaving her completely unprepared for his affection. She mentally begs him to snap out of it, finding his sweet whispers and behavior entirely abnormal. He continues to lavish her with affection, telling her again how much he loves her. He declares he is wide awake but cannot take his eyes off her, calling her by her full name, Elviana. He holds her hand and insists on taking her home since the party is ending, ignoring her protests that she still needs to talk. He marvels at how small and soft her hand is, saying it feels like it could melt away. She snaps at him to stop being ridiculous and questions the new nickname Ellie he has given her. She realizes he has never called her that before and knows she should pull away, but finds herself unable to do so. He asks her thoughts, stating that as someone who loves her, he cannot stand by and let things continue. He brings up the other men who are always around her, his tone shifting to one of possession. He admits he wants her to stop seeing other men, acknowledging that while he doesn't want to restrict her, that is his simple request. He thinks to himself that if he could have done that ages ago, he would have. He notes that the difficult situation persists because the curse never broke. She recalls how she tried to keep her distance from men and trained herself to hide negative emotions whenever the charm magic triggered. Klaus acknowledges her struggle and proposes a compromise. He asks her to set aside time just for him, even once a week, and pleads with her not to avoid him anymore. Her eyes widen in surprise at his desperate request. She realizes that avoiding him is pointless if he is already under the spell anyway, so she doesn't have to hold back. She agrees to give him as much of her time as he wants, reminding him that they are engaged after all. Even knowing he is under a charm, hearing him speak so sweetly makes her heart flutter uncontrollably. She finds herself dreaming and hoping that this moment will never end. The carriage arrives at her home, and the staff bows to welcome her back. Lizzie, her maid, looks up with an expression of pure shock to see Klaus there. Elviana turns to Klaus and thanks him for walking her home. Klaus announces his return, and Elviana notes Lizzie's surprise, as it has been years since he last visited. He takes her hand gently in his, lingering in the moment. He smiles radiantly at her while she looks back in confusion, unsure of his intentions. He apologizes softly, admitting that he just didn't want to say goodbye yet. Flustered, she asks him if he would mind letting go of her hand. He tells her not to say things like that and reminds her they will see each other tomorrow, a statement that flusters her further. With the servants watching nervously, she wonders what it will take to make him finally go home. He points to his cheek and playfully suggests that a kiss right there would do the trick. He leans in closer, waiting for her compliance with a gentle smile. He stubbornly declares that he won't leave until she kisses him. She realizes with a start that they have never even kissed before, causing her panic to rise. She hides her face in her hands, overwhelmed by embarrassment and the situation. Her eyes dart around nervously as she tries to work up the courage. She quickly pecks him and demands to know if he is satisfied now, her face burning red. Klaus touches his cheek where she kissed him, looking utterly enchanted by the action. She turns away, hiding her face, wondering what on earth she is supposed to do with this overwhelming situation. He bids her a final farewell for the night, promising to see her tomorrow. She clutches her chest, feeling that her heart absolutely cannot take this level of affection. Lizzie rushes over to her, calling out, "My lady," in concern and excitement. Narrating that Lizzie has been her friend since their academy days and now serves as her faithful maid after her parents fell into debt. Lizzie expresses her joy that Elviana finally spoke with Klaus-sama again. Lizzie beams with pure delight, overjoyed that Elviana has finally broken her silence and spoken to Klaus again. Elviana clarifies that it wasn't just a simple chat, reflecting on how Lizzie has remained her closest support, treating her with kindness even after the curse took hold. As her hair is brushed, Elviana drops a terrifying realization. She suspects she may have accidentally cast the charm spell on Klaus as well. Guilt weighs heavily on her for manipulating him, reinforcing her desperate need to break the curse by defeating the magic beast. Her thoughts drift to a much darker, final solution, and she hesitates as she considers the ultimate sacrifice. Elviana grimly admits that while not ideal, ending her own life is technically one valid option to break the spell. Lizzie immediately shuts down the morbid thought, sternly commanding that her lady absolutely cannot die. Steeled by Lizzie's reaction, Elviana agrees it is too soon to give up and vows to keep gathering information on the beast. However, the dark truth lingers in her mind that if she dies, the spell binding Klaus will definitively end. A week passes after her resolve is set, but her attempt to avoid Klaus fails when he calls out to her before she can escape. Klaus charmingly invites her to walk with him, noting that their next class is in the East Hall. He reaches for her hand with an intensity that suggests he is trying to make up for all the time they lost. Walking side by side, Klaus remains glued to her, displaying an unwavering devotion that leaves Elviana stunned. Elviana notices that other men have stopped approaching her, realizing her rejection tactics are finally working, though the silence is unsettling. The sudden closeness of the couple draws curious whispers from the other students, who wonder what has changed between them. Trapped by his constant presence in class, Elviana laments that being with him 24/7 makes it impossible to research the magic beast. Klaus leans against his hand, ignoring the lesson to fixate his gaze entirely on Elviana. Elviana becomes increasingly flushed and annoyed, mentally screaming at him to stop staring so intensely. He apologizes with a smile, admitting he got distracted because her focused expression while studying is beautiful. Leaning in closer, he whispers that even her flustered face is adorable, only deepening her embarrassment. Blushing furiously, Elviana snaps at him to stop talking since they are supposed to be in class. She tries to rationalize his behavior, convincing herself that these sweet words are just the charm speaking through him. Despite her logic, she struggles to maintain her composure, feeling her heart race under his attention. A close look at his features makes her wonder just how long it has been since she allowed herself to see him this close. She finds herself captivated by his serious expression, unable to pull her eyes away. Although he told her not to stare, she indulges in just one more glance, unable to resist looking at him. Suddenly, Klaus turns his head and catches her red-handed, their eyes locking in an electric moment. He teases her with a smirk, warning that if she keeps looking at him like that, she will burn a hole through his face. Elviana jolts back in shock, completely caught off guard by his direct confrontation. With a confident smile, Klaus asks if she was truly that captivated by him. Panic sets in and she jumps up, loudly denying that she was looking at him and telling him not to flatter himself. The outburst draws the attention of the class, and a student asks them to please keep it down. Mortified, Elviana shrinks back into her seat, mumbling an apology for the disruption. Klaus simply laughs, declaring that he doesn't mind the staring at all as long as it is Ellie doing it. Elviana tries to calm her racing heart, realizing she absorbed absolutely nothing from the class lecture. A wave of sadness hits her as she reminds herself that he doesn't truly like her, she is just an obstacle to his real happiness. Sitting alone on the stairs, she greets a passerby but internally battles the selfish desire to let things stay this way. The blonde princess confronts her, coldly asking if this current situation is really what they agreed upon. Stepping closer, the rival questions if Elviana's behavior is intended to be some form of harassment. The confrontation forces Elviana to realize that despite thinking she accepted reality, she was still secretly hoping for his love. The princess scorns her, asking if she has grown attached to Klaus again and calling her shameless for ignoring his true feelings. Elviana apologizes, But the princess presses the attack, demanding to know why they are getting along when Elviana promised to break up with him. Rumors are brought up, with the princess accusing Elviana of feeding Klaus a love potion to cause such a sudden change. Elviana is horrified that the rumors have spread so far, while the princess guesses that if it isn't a potion, it must be charm magic. Caught in a corner, Elviana debates telling the truth, knowing that Klaus will hear these rumors eventually regardless. She confesses that she just wants to stay by his side a little longer while she hunts for a specific magic beast. Elviana lies to cover the truth, claiming a mutual acquaintance was bitten by the beast in the royal forest, making a breakup impossible right now. She raises the stakes, warning the princess that if the beast isn't found, that acquaintance could die. The princess's attitude shifts instantly, and she offers to help Elviana find the beast. Elviana is relieved and thanks her, thinking that having the princess as an ally will definitely speed up the search. The princess clarifies the condition, asking to confirm that you'll die if the beast isn't found, seemingly seeing through the lie. The princess mumbles something under her breath, causing Elviana to ask her to repeat it. With a deceptive smile, the princess claims she said nothing at all. Elviana promises to reach out with details, internally steeling herself to end this happy dream for Klaus's sake once the beast is found. As Elviana walks away, the princess touches her cheek, musing that she just heard something very interesting. The two part ways with polite farewells, masking the tension beneath the surface. Left alone, the princess begins to laugh, a chilling sound echoing in the empty hall. She declares with sinister confidence that there is nothing in this world she cannot obtain. She is delighted, noting that she never expected things to go this well. With a dark, possessive blush, she vows that in the end, Klaus will belong to her. She admits she only planned to make Elviana suffer a bit, but discovering the girl has a life-threatening curse is a delightful bonus. Recognizing the lethality of the situation, the princess decides she will never hand Elviana over, intending to use this to her advantage. Deep in the shadows, a large, furry tail rests behind bars, revealing the captured magic beast is already in custody. Elviana visits the cage, speaking softly to the creature she calls Nainya, promising to return. She bids the beast farewell, noting that these secret visits have become her nightly routine. Hurrying away, she tries to keep the visit short to avoid suspicion, but Klaus suddenly intercepts her. He towers over her, stating with a serious tone that he has a favor to ask. The scene shifts abruptly to the next morning as Elviana is shaken awake by her frantic maid. Her room is a flurry of activity, with maids presenting her dress and shouting for hair oil. Elviana recalls with shock that Klaus invited himself to her home the previous night, and she was too stunned to refuse. Her maid scolds her for panicking, insisting that everything must be perfect since Klaus is visiting. Klaus greets her, complimenting her gorgeous appearance and suggesting they let the worried staff have their fun. Elviana thanks him but guards her heart, resolving to expect nothing and just watch over things until the curse is broken. She apologizes for the chaos, explaining that her house has been hectic since the morning. Klaus smiles warmly, thanking her for greeting him and calling her affectionately by her nickname. She ushers him inside, and he remarks that she looks especially beautiful since he rarely sees her out of uniform. Elviana deflects the compliment, thinking he dodged her coldness well, and just hopes to survive the day. They sit for tea in silence, and Elviana prays internally that the visit remains uneventful. She brings up the topic of the hunting festival, noting that the season has arrived again. A flashback reveals the grandeur of the hunting festival held 4 years ago in the castle forest. Klaus softly mentions that he still treasures the braided cord she gave him back then. The memory turns dark as the narrative reveals that was also the day a specific incident occurred. Elviana explains the tradition where lovers gift handmade cords before the hunt as a wish for safety and trophies. She looks at him in disbelief, admitting she thought he would have thrown such a thing away by now. Klaus pulls back his cravat to reveal he is wearing it right now, declaring he treasures everything she has ever given him. Klaus holds up a dust fiber preserved from over a year ago, calling it his last gift to her while presenting a ring box. Ellie is horrified to realize the timeline predates the charm magic, meaning he shouldn't have been affected then, and mentally dismisses the fiber as trash. Dismissing the fiber as unworthy of a duke's heir, Klaus declares that anything she gives him becomes a treasure to him. He specifically requests a braided cord made by her own hands for the next festival. Ellie hesitates, knowing such cords are for lovers, but agrees to think about it while questioning her right to give one. Panic sets in as she wonders if he has sensed the charm curse, despite no man ever noticing it before. Klaus confesses that his love makes him stupid and spending days with her feels like a dream. He describes the sensation as being under a spell, striking a nerve with Ellie. She nervously tries to play it off by asking if he believes in fairy tale magic while telling herself to breathe. Klaus vows not to force her secrets out but hopes she will eventually reciprocate his openness. Guilt consumes her as she internally confesses to cursing such a kind man with her spell. He reaches out, his hand gently approaching her face. Klaus announces he is going to touch her for a moment, pulling her close. Ellie freezes, terrified and blushing as she wonders if he intends to kiss her right there. Instead of a kiss, he fastens something around her neck and declares it done. He reveals a necklace with an azalea gem matched to her eye color, crafted with the help of her maids. Gazing at her intimately, he declares that from head to toe, she feels entirely his today. Despite her resolve, Ellie is overjoyed by the gift and thanks him with genuine happiness. Klaus humbly deflects the gratitude, insisting it simply matches her eyes. He smiles to himself, thinking that she is truly adorable. Klaus excuses himself to step out for a moment, leaving her briefly. The carriage ride and the day's events pass by in a flash. Ellie resolves to act against the magic beast before Klaus notices anything, fearing she is overthinking the magic. Klaus startles her by catching her sneaking around and asking what she is doing. She internally panics, thinking she can only move against the magic beast when he is not around. Klaus abruptly states he has business today and cannot spend time with her. Ellie stammers a reply, feeling exposed. She accepts his departure, noting it is unusual but convenient since she has things to do as well. Klaus walks away, thinking that working alone is honestly better for his research. Ellie sits alone in the library, surrounded by books but looking dejected. She sighs deeply, struggling to concentrate on her task. Feeling lonely the moment she is alone, she wonders if she is the one who has been charmed. A sound catches her attention and she wonders if someone is there. She scolds herself to focus and find more reference materials. She recalls Klaus saying he missed meeting her alone and felt lonely. The memory shifts to him mentioning he had errands to run. A bad feeling washes over her as she questions the situation. She spots Klaus in the distance, seemingly with the princess. The woman asks if he thought of her, while Ellie tells herself peeking is wrong and tries to leave. Klaus replies that he is happy and his head is full of the woman he loves. The woman concludes they are mutually in love. Ellie flees the scene, leaving Klaus and the woman behind in the library stacks. Running away, Ellie concludes Klaus loves the princess and that his feelings are strong enough to break through the charm. She collapses in despair, finding it unbearable to see him with another woman. She decides to end it here, believing this heartbreak will help her let go. Resolving not to get in Klaus's way, she commits to thinking only about the magic beast from now on. Wiping her tears, she declares that her feelings end here and this is the last day she will cry. Later, Klaus apologizes to her, stating they cannot be together today either. Ellie accepts it calmly, claiming she is just returning to her old routine bit by bit. Klaus reaches out to stop her, calling her name. He asks with concern if he did something to upset her. Reminding her that he is her fiancé, he urges her to rely on him if something happens. He pins her against the wall, but she insists she really has errands and he did nothing wrong. She internally notes his dutiful nature for still treating her as a fiancé. She agrees to his offer but privately plans to ask the knights or temple for help with the beast instead. Though she has a mountain of tasks, she wants him to cherish his time with the princess after the trouble she caused. Admitting she cannot genuinely cheer for them yet, she decides to stop thinking about it entirely. She chooses to quietly fade out of his life. Klaus watches her leave with a stoic, unreadable expression. In a dream, she imagines telling him she hates him, but in reality he asks what is wrong about her. She chides herself for being pathetic and dreaming of him because he is still in her heart. She wakes up in her bed, realizing it was all a dream. At the temple, she confirms there is no new information regarding the magic beast. The priestess mentions a concern unrelated to the beast. They acknowledge they are stuck in place regarding the investigation. The priestess reveals a young man came by recently researching charm magic, prompting Ellie to beg for details. Ellie is surprised to hear it was a young man. She wonders if it could be Klaus but denies it when asked if anyone comes to mind. Lizzie thanks her and suggests they remain patient regarding the beast hunt. Lizzie proposes a change of pace by going into town after their visit. Ellie agrees, deciding that overthinking will not help the situation. She reaffirms her decision to stop overthinking. At a shop, Lizzie questions when Ellie started liking handicrafts, though Ellie denies the purchase is for herself. Lizzie perceptively guesses that Ellie is making a braided cord for Klaus. Ignoring the question, Ellie says it sounds good and suggests they leave. Ellie mutters that she doesn't like him anymore and decides not to make the cord, believing his request was just the charm talking. Lizzie reveals she overheard Klaus asking for a handmade one. Lizzie asks if she will send one to the prince, confusing Ellie, who questions why not. It is explained that the seventh prince, Louis, was once engaged to Lizzie before her family fell into debt. Despite the broken engagement, they still care for each other, as shown in a flashback where she greets him warmly. Lizzie calls out to Ellie, urging her to stop by their usual draper's shop. Lizzie insists on repaying Ellie for once, but Ellie feels she is the one who owes Lizzie. Lizzie suddenly claims she is in a hurry and runs off, leaving Ellie behind. Ellie bumps into Klaus and exclaims that meeting him there feels like fate. Time stops as their gazes lock in intense silence. Klaus cheerfully invites Ellie on a date, but his romantic gesture is instantly cut short by a maid announcing urgent business. The maids whisper assurances to Ellie, urging her to trust Klaus as they whisk him away and leave her in his care. Klaus turns back to Ellie with a smile and suggests they should get moving as well. He grabs her hand and pulls her along, insisting there is no time to waste while she wonders where they are going. Ellie flusteredly asks him to please slow down as she struggles to keep up with his pace. Klaus asks what the problem is, claiming he is perfectly happy just being with her. Ellie realizes she must speak clearly now or she will get dragged along by his whims again. She steels herself and tells him firmly that she cannot be with him anymore. Klaus stops walking and turns to her, asking confusedly what she means by that statement. She confirms her words and demands he let go of her hand, prompting him to ask if she truly doesn't want to be with him. Klaus lowers his gaze and accepts the situation, murmuring that he understands. Bystanders whisper about the couple arguing and judge their outfits, speculating they must be lower nobility. Klaus smiles and reminds her not to use honorifics since they are currently posing as commoners, while she questions his clothing choice. He teases that if she doesn't want the noble Klaus, then being with commoner Klaus should be acceptable. Ellie panics and stammers that he has completely misunderstood her intention. Klaus explains this is a thank you for inviting him to her home and insists on taking her to a specific place. Ellie finds herself unable to refuse when he frames the outing as a gesture of gratitude. As they walk hand in hand through the market, Ellie laments that her attempt to break things off is falling apart. She resolves internally that she will definitely tell him her true feelings today. Klaus holds up a ribbon and cheerfully suggests it would look good on her. He asks for her preference between the options, keeping the mood light and playful. Klaus calls her adorable, causing Ellie to blush and stammer in embarrassment. Ellie notes how smoothly he dodges serious topics but prepares to execute her plan, only to be interrupted by a child bumping into him. A rude man scolds the child for running into people as the kid falls to the ground. Ellie gasps as she notices the child is bleeding quite a bit from the fall. Klaus immediately crouches down to check on the injured boy. He rips a piece of fabric from his own sleeve to use as a makeshift bandage. Klaus gently treats the wound and praises the boy for being brave enough not to cry. He turns to Ellie with a concerned expression, explaining that the bandage is just a quick fix. Ellie watches him with a softened expression, impressed by his toughness and kindness. Klaus decides to carry the boy to a clinic and asks Ellie if she is able to walk that far. He tells the boy to stay put for a moment while he prepares to lift him. Klaus effortlessly lifts the child into his arms. Ellie agrees with his decision and urges him to proceed to the clinic. She gently touches the child's head, thinking to herself that Klaus is as kind as ever. Klaus looks back at her with a flushed, gentle expression. Ellie touches her forehead, troubled by the realization that his kindness hasn't changed. She observes that while others become blindly obsessed, Klaus remains composed, making his reaction to the charm seem weak or off. A creepy man approaches Ellie while she waits alone, asking if she is the young man from the temple. The drunk man mocks her lack of cash and aggressively demands she spare a coin. When she refuses, the man grabs her arm and tells her to take off her dress as payment. Klaus intervenes instantly, grabbing the man's arm and warning him not to touch his girlfriend. Ellie looks up at Klaus in shock, surprised by his sudden arrival. Klaus throws money at the man, telling him to take it and get lost. He scoops Ellie up into his arms and declares they are leaving immediately. Ellie is embarrassed by the Princess Carrie and notices that Klaus looks genuinely angry. She tries to thank him for the help as he sets her down on a quiet bench. Klaus leans his head against her shoulder, exhaling deeply. Ellie worries that his soft heart and good looks will get him into trouble if he isn't careful. He mumbles about a punishment for making him worry and tugs at the ribbon of her dress. Ellie feels guilty for stealing time that should belong to the princess and decides she must speak now. She apologizes for the trouble she caused and states clearly that she cannot be with him any more from now on. She declares that she cannot give him the braided cord they promised to exchange that day. Klaus looks at her with wide eyes as she hopes he understands the implication of her refusal. She explains that receiving a cord from the princess would be better for him than being bound to a fiancé in name only. Klaus turns away and flatly refuses her logic. Ellie is taken aback by his immediate and blunt denial. He states firmly that if he cannot get a braided cord from her, he will not attend the festival at all. Klaus issues an ultimatum that he will only go if Ellie gives him the cord. Ellie panics, reminding him that everyone is counting on his performance. She worries about his reputation since he is the favorite to win and the teachers expect him to participate. Seeing his stubborn smile, she reluctantly agrees to give it to him. However, she adds a condition that she won't forgive him if he fails to win the tournament. She rationalizes that she is only doing this to save his face and doesn't need to put her feelings into the gift. Ellie reaches into her pocket to retrieve the cord. She hands the small item over to him. Klaus takes her hand and promises to dedicate his victory to her. He adds with a smile that if he wins, he expects a reward from her. Ellie blushes deeply, caught off guard by his bold request. He takes her hand and says it is getting late, leading her home. The narrative shifts to the hunting festival, where feelings are laid on the line. The chapter begins on a bright day as the sun shines down on the event. Ellie clutches the cord, noting that the day of the festival arrived so fast. Klaus calls out to her as she presents the slightly crooked cord she made. The crowd gossips about the two most handsome men, Prince Louis and Klaus, entering the scene. Ellie wonders if she can push through the crowd to give him the cord now. She spots Klaus and decides that handing it over publicly will look proper. A bystander shouts that only his fiancée is allowed to give him a token. Princess Lucille approaches the crowd, telling them they are being noisy and stating she has business with Klaus. She finds Klaus amidst the gathering. Bystanders gossip about Klaus and Princess Lucille being in love and looking stunning together. Lucille smiles and admits she actually wanted to give Klaus a braided cord herself. Her attendant Lizzie is outraged, calling it shameless to approach an engaged man. Lucille's expression darkens into a chilling, empty stare. The scene sets a tense stage with Klaus, Lucille, and Ellie all present as the drama unfolds. Ellie attempts to step away quietly, telling the maid she will step out for a moment. She reflects on her decision to step aside, feeling overwhelmed by his kindness. Convinced this is a fleeting dream born of charm magic, she accepts that a placeholder fiancé is no longer necessary. Klaus suddenly grabs her hand and calls out her name to stop her retreat. Kneeling before her, he asks if the item on the ground wasn't meant for him. Ellie argues that since he received one from the princess, it would be unfair for him to accept hers due to the charm magic. Klaus looks deeply hurt and asks why she views their connection in such a distorted way. He declares he refused the princess because he promised to only accept a gift from Ellie. Ellie is bewildered and asks if he doesn't like the princess. She admits hearing rumors in the library that Klaus and the princess were in love, which he flatly denies. Breaking down in tears, Ellie apologizes for failing to bow out quietly as she had intended. Klaus gazes at her softly and apologizes for loving her. He realizes she tried to break their engagement because she believed he had fallen for the princess. Ellie decides to stop hiding the truth, declaring that this is the end. She confesses that he is currently under the influence of her charm magic. Weeping, she claims his feelings for her are all fake due to the spell. Klaus simply notes that she has finally told him the truth. He reveals he already knew about the charm, leaving Ellie stunned. He sensed something was wrong when she distanced herself, knowing a serious woman like her wouldn't play around. He observed that the other men were obsessed to an abnormal degree, like a fairy tale spell. The moment she stood in the light while trying to break the engagement confirmed his suspicion of charm magic. He realized she hid the truth to spare him from guilt and kept her distance to protect him. After visiting her parents and the temple repeatedly, the priest revealed she was cursed by a magic beast. Ellie cannot believe he went that far for someone she claimed to hate, but he counters that hate doesn't drive such devotion. He admits that back then he wanted to say he couldn't hate her. Ellie is horrified to realize her assumptions were wrong and blames herself for his exposure to the curse. Klaus holds her face gently, insisting that none of this is her fault. He thanks her, admitting it would have hurt less if she actually hated him, but instead, he ended up hurting her. Taking her hand, he proposes they find a way to break the charm together from now on. Even with mercenaries and knights, no leads were found on the beast in the small royal forest. They confirm the beast has still not been located. Klaus recalls the princess bragging long ago about finding a rare creature. She had described a small white thing with one blue and one gold eye right after a hunting festival. A sketch of the rabbit-like creature matches the description of the beast. Ellie denies the possibility, recalling that the princess offered to help when confided in. She reasons that the princess adores Klaus and wouldn't want to physically remove Ellie if it hurt him. Klaus suggests a darker motive, fearing the princess might be waiting for the curse to kill Ellie naturally. Seeing her fear, Klaus comforts Ellie and promises to handle the situation. Ellie feels safe with him, noting that just one word from him reassures her. Klaus muses that the situation is strange. He recalls the priest saying the charm didn't work because Ellie lacked enough negative emotion toward him. He questions why the charm didn't affect him when he stood in the same light as the others. He deduces the truth: Ellie is madly in love with him, negating the condition for the curse. He teases her, noting she went full puppy mode just to stay by his side. Blushing, Klaus admits he realized he couldn't stay beside her otherwise. Ellie is overwhelmed by his adorableness but frantically asks him to forget that part. A bell rings in the distance, signaling that they should head back. Klaus asserts that his feelings are not so flimsy that a simple charm could blow them away. Ellie is touched, realizing he cares about her deeply. Before leaving, he tells her not to get hurt. Klaus focuses intensely, his eyes sharp with determination. He displays incredible skill, shooting targets from horseback while the crowd cheers his guaranteed win. Ellie watches him, thinking he looks incredible. Klaus thinks he cannot look away, fully focused. Prince Louis approaches Ellie, noting Klaus is really fired up for the competition. He apologizes to Ellie for the trouble his sister caused that morning. Louis laughs that the issue is resolved because Klaus proudly showed off the braided cord Ellie gave him. Louis reveals he received a cord as well. A girl nearby, likely Lizzie, is relieved she managed to give hers to him. Louis declares he won't hold back because he wants to win for her as well. Ellie confidently states Klaus won't lose, causing Louis to laugh and call them a perfect match. Ellie resolves that if Klaus wins, she will tell him how she really feels. She considers that Prince Louis might be right about them. The tournament festivities continue with flags waving in the wind. The afternoon hunt concludes, and the announcer prepares to name the winner. Klaus Rusvin is declared the winner as Ellie watches with joy. Klaus steps up to receive his crown and cape. He publicly dedicates his victory to his fiancée, Ellie. The crowd erupts in applause. Ellie blushes and congratulates Klaus on his win. Klaus announces to the crowd that while her charm makes people want to approach, no one is allowed to touch her. He warns that he will not be lenient if anyone dares to try. The crowd realizes the rumors were wrong and that men were approaching her, not the other way around. They admire Klaus's protectiveness and note Ellie's gentle expression. The applause continues. Onlookers comment that the two of them are perfect together. Hiding behind a tree, a woman with dark eyes glares, asking why it isn't her and calling Ellie annoying.